I recently read this article, Recognizing the Signs of Coercive Control, and recently I've been unpacking and working through some of the things that I experienced when I was in the troubled teen facilities that I was in. And when I was reading this article, all I could think about were those facilities. I'm going to go through the article, but this had me thinking that these places kind of normalize this abuse and this control, and they're normalizing this when we're very young. And so we're probably taking on habits that are affecting us lifelong because these things have been so normalized in our youth. And not only normalized, but put out to us as a good thing by our families, our communities, things like that. Trigger warning, this is your last chance to turn around. You're going to get into some dodgy stuff. Sometimes abusive tactics in relationships are subtle and difficult to identify, but insults, manipulation, and intimidation can all be a part of what's known as coercive control. Coercive is implying threat or control, and it can be several different types of abuse, including things like emotional abuse, and it exists obviously in other settings. But the first one is assault, and this obviously happens in these facilities. I've seen girls be tackled, I've seen girls be restrained. This is definitely a form of control that they are using. And for some people, it's probably worse than even what I just mentioned. And then threats of impending consequences or just to create fear. And like the threats were a constant. The threat to keep us there, the threat to not let us go outside, the threat to take away even our family visits, to take away even our right to be around other people. This is a big one. Insults or humiliation. I think this is so normalized in these facilities. And some parts, I think it's essentially part of the program to put other people down and point out their flaws so that they can work on them, when in actuality, you're just humiliating them. And I think at every facility, at least at every facility I was at, there's always one or two kids that were definitely liked to be least by staff. A couple members of staff had nicknames for me that weren't very nice. At one facility, I don't even know what I'd call her, the owner, the manager, she would often make comments about how slutty the girls look. This is also just baked into the system. And then isolation, I mean, we know that they're getting up to this. From things like solitary confinement to just not allowing you to talk to your neighbor next to you, not allowing you to call out and speak freely home. They take you out of your community. They take away everything that you like, all your clothes, all your makeup, all your stuffed animals, all your toys, all your blankets, your pets, your friends, your parents. You are taken out of all of that, and you're isolated from all of that as a means of control. And I think they do it so we'd be more grateful for it or something like that. But honestly, it's just created like lifelong trauma. I have like attachment to weird things. I have trouble socializing. And I think a lot of it came from the isolation that I experienced as a teenager in these places, because you're not taught how to socialize appropriately. You're just basically told to be quiet. And if you're quiet, then you're not in trouble. That's not teaching you any valuable skills or anything like that. And then we have activity monitoring. I mean, of course, cameras in the bathroom isn't unusual. Cameras while you sleep. Staff constantly watching everything that you do. We weren't allowed to access things like the news online. We were allowed like very limited access to things like Wikipedia. And then financial control. Yeah, I do think this is part of it. They're probably taking money from your parents. And if you're like me, I had a job while I was in these places where I was making like literally like no money, but it would be enough that I could go get shampoo later on, when I was allowed to have my own shampoo at the last level. And it was eaten up like that, even though I was working like the entire year, every weekend, all summer long. I basically made no money. I made enough money to buy myself shampoo and things like that while I was at the facility. My adopted dad constantly brought up that he basically paid child support. And for him, like, I don't care. I'm glad he paid it. But I think for a lot of loving homes, a lot of loving families, like, they're really taking advantage of people here. For TikTok's sake, I'm not going to say this one, but I've read several accounts of this occurring, and it's not out of the realm of possibility for sure. And while I wouldn't say that I explicitly experienced this, we were forced to get like full pap smears when we got there. And a couple of times in the middle, I was there for about a year, and then right before we left. So I probably had about 4 paps under my belt by the time I was out of there. That's not normal, especially for somebody my age. It was just bizarre. And it's given me a lot of long-term issues with seeking medical care, as I'm sure you'd understand. Removing autonomy for all but like the last month, like I was there, like I said, in one of my facilities. In most facilities, we were required to use their soaps, their deodorants, things like that. And I was like constantly having reactions to their deodorants because it was basically just speed stick for men. They wouldn't let me have like the products that I did have in my bag when I came. I couldn't have soaps. I couldn't have anything like that. I couldn't have anything that my family would potentially give me, things like that. And so I just would have to use their things. We weren't allowed to go to the bathroom and things so many minutes after we were done eating, and that's for certain reasons, but it was, all of us weren't experiencing those issues, but all of us had to oblige with that. And then you'd basically have to have somebody spotting you go and listening to you. So there was like not even a moment of peace, even in the bathrooms. And this particular article goes on to say that when coercive control becomes a pattern of behavior, it's considered abuse. And I was in different facilities for like 5 to 6 years, and being stuck in a cycle of being in different facilities is, where I come from, is not abnormal. A lot of the girls and boys in my different facilities would end up in different facilities later, would be bounced around, they'd be elevated to another facility, they'd get out, they'd get back in. It was just kind of a revolving door issue, like it is regular prisons almost. Like once you get in there, it's not hard to go back. They put you on like a probation system. So if you mess up, you can go right back to a place like that. And then they continue to just keep elevating the issue. And so if you're not getting help for that, you're basically just going to end up in a lockdown facility eventually. And everything is used as a means of control. And so again, I think when you leave, it's really hard to step out of what is and isn't normal in realms of control. And I struggle with that in realms of like how people are trying to help me too. Sometimes I perceive it as more controlling than it is because I'm overly perceptive and overly aware of it now. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that places like this are basically normalizing control and coercion as a means of existence? Because I think in a big way that they are.